Grammar Preview 1, Nouns and Adjectives. This preview of basic grammar covers the following: how to determine which words in a sentence are nouns, how to determine which words in a sentence are adjectives, and at the end of the preview we'll practice identifying nouns and adjectives in sentences. At heart, nouns are things, like objects, people, animals, ideas, names, places, times, qualities, categories, groups, and all sorts of other things. Basically, if you can touch it with your hand, then it's probably a noun. Or if you can do the equivalent with your mind, that is, consider, conceive, and contemplate it, if you can wrap your head around it, it's a noun. Identifying nouns in English is not hard. Most have one or more of three characteristic features. 1. English nouns are often preceded by one of two articles, the or a. Articles are small words used with a noun that act like weak forms of this or some. For instance, the car, a doctor, a mother, the mind. 2. The vast majority of nouns in English can be pluralized with s. Cars, doctors, mothers, minds. This test, the plural s test, is probably the best and easiest way to check if a word is a noun. In other words, if you can pluralize it with s, it's all but definitely a noun. And finally, nouns can be replaced with pronouns, like he, she, it, or they, or their objective equivalents, him, her, it, them. A car, for instance, can also be called it. I bought a car is the same as saying I bought it, assuming the person you're talking to understands that the it in the second sentence means the car. The reason this test works is that pronouns like it, he, she, or they replace nouns and only nouns, not any other part of speech. So, doctor can be replaced by she or he, or her or him. Thus, the doctor is good can also be expressed as she or he is good. I like the doctor is equivalent to I like her or him. Similarly, they or them is the pronoun equivalent used to replace plural nouns, like cars, doctors. The cars are over there equals they are over there. I visited the doctors equals I visited them. That means if you can put a pronoun like he, her, them, or it in place of a word in a sentence, then that word is a noun. Pronoun replacement is just as reliable a test as pluralizing in determining if a word is a noun. The only problem here is it assumes you know the nature and function of pronouns, which not everyone does. So I call the pronoun test the second best test. Everyone knows how to pluralize. That's the only reason the S test is better. So let's review. Here are the three ways to test if a word is a noun. Not all of them always work for every noun. Some nouns don't take the or a or can't be pluralized with s. But even if only one of these tests works, then the word is almost certainly a noun. Test 1. Is there a the or a in front of the word? Or can you put the or a in front of it? Test 2. Is the word plural, or can it be made plural by adding s? This is far and away the simplest and best test of a noun's nounness. And finally, test 3. Can you replace the word in question with a pronoun like he or him, she or her, they or them, or it? Let's practice using those tests to determine whether or not a word is a noun. Rome conquered the world. You're going to get a lot of Roman propaganda here. I'm a classicist. Promoting Rome is my job. Get used to it. Rome conquered the world. Let's start with world. Is that a noun? It has the in front of it, and while it's not plural, you could pluralize it worlds. And You can replace world with it. Rome conquered it means the same thing, assuming the listener understands that it means world. So, no question, world has got to be a noun. We'll color it red, as we will all the nouns we uncover here. Now, what about Rome? Can you put the in front of Rome? The Rome. I suppose so. The Rome of the late Republic was a dangerous place. The Rome seems artificial, but not totally wrong. It's hard to tell. Let's see if another test doesn't give a clearer answer. Can you pluralize it? Romes. Well, there are Romes. There's a Rome in Italy and a Rome in Georgia. But Romes doesn't sound like something you'd say very often. So from both the first two tests, it's hard to see if Rome is a noun. There's one more test, however, the pronoun replacement test. Let's hope that's more helpful. Can you replace Rome with it? Sure, that's easy. It conquered the world. As long as you and your reader know you're talking about Rome, it can replace Rome. No problem. So even though Rome passes only one of the noun tests with flying colors, Rome is clearly a noun. Finally, what about conquered? Can you put a in front of it? A conquered. No. Can you pluralize it? Conquereds. No. Can you replace it with it or any other pronoun? Rome itted the world. Rome them the world. Definitely not. Conquered doesn't pass a single noun test. It must not be a noun. In the next grammar presentation, we'll learn what conquered is, a verb. But for the moment, let's move on. Here's another sentence that has nouns in it. Almost all of them do. And it's a little more complicated. Who would have guessed that the Romans would eventually rule the countries around their land? Now, don't let the complexity of this sentence baffle you. Just apply the simple tests we learned above to each word one by one. When you attack things one by one, it doesn't make any difference if there are 2 or 200 or 2 million of them. Tackle each individually, and eventually you'll win. So let's start with a simple question. What words in this sentence have the or a in front of them? Those have to be nouns. I don't see any a's at all. But there are 2 these, the Romans and the countries. Both of those must be nouns. Just to be safe, let's apply the other rules. Both are also plural and could be replaced by they and them. Who would have guessed that they would eventually rule them? Romans and countries are definitely nouns. Any others? What about land? It doesn't have the or a in front of it, but could you put it there? The land? A land? Sure. Can you pluralize it? Lands? Of course you can. Can you put it in place of land? The country's about it? I suppose so, assuming the listener knows that it means the Romans' land. Land must be a noun too. That's pretty easy, isn't it? So let's ratchet up the game a little. Here's a whole paragraph. Find the nouns. There are 15. Pause this presentation and take a moment to apply the noun tests we just discussed and see if you can figure out which words here are nouns. When you restart the presentation, I'll go step by step with you over how to determine which words are nouns. Okay? Stop the presentation now. Okay, you found all 15? Maybe you say? We'll see. Let's start by applying the tests for nouns, beginning with the best and easiest one, the plural test. What's the first word in this passage that has a plural S ending? Romans. Next. Centuries. Next. Neighbors. Next. Makings. Any more? Yes. Innovations. Any more? No. So, on to the next test. What's the first word with the or a attached to the front? A population. Next. The edge. Next. Oh, way at the bottom. The people. Any others? Yes. The area. And no more these or a's. How many nouns is that now? 9. And there are 15. So that means there are still 6 to go. Now we'll have to use the last test, the pronoun replacement one. Which words can be replaced with he, him, she, her, they, them, or it? Originally? No. Living? No. In? No. Italy? Yes, Italy's an it. Which means it's a noun. That makes 10. What about civilization? Can that be replaced by it? Sure it can. So, civilization must be a noun too. That makes 11. What about spent? The Romans itted centuries. No. Conquering? Itting? No. They is already a pronoun, so forget it. What's the next word that can be replaced with a pronoun? What about greatness? To have the makings of it. Yes, that can be it. So greatness is a noun. 12. Next, government. Yes, that can also be it. So government is a noun. That makes 13. 2 more. Technology, can that be it? Sure, 14. And the last noun in this passage, which word is it? Which word can be replaced by it? That's right, supremacy, which you now have over nouns. You are a noun ninja, those small pathetic things that cower beneath your mighty pointing sword-like index finger. Use your power wisely, great one. Now let's make you an admiral of adjectives too. Adjectives at heart are modifiers. To grammarians, modifying means delimiting, restricting the possibilities of something. So for instance, if we're standing in a big crowded parking lot, and I say, look at that car, there are well over 100 cars I could mean. But if I say, look at that yellow car, the possibilities are far fewer. Maybe only one. I mean, seriously, how many cars out there are yellow these days? Or if I say, the old doctor, well, now you know it's not that young one over there. A loving mother. Well, that doesn't really limit the possibilities much. Mothers tend to be loving, but it does rule out some. Medea. The best mind. So we're probably talking about someone at a university. Like a professor. Like me. Okay, fine, but definitely not a politician. Adjectives are very useful because they allow us to be precise about which noun out of a group we mean without having to create a new noun for every possibility. Think about it. What if there had to be a different word for every type of car, or mother, or mind, or doctor? Well, for doctor there almost is. Pediatrician, gerontologist, neurologist, cardiologist, which only makes the point. Kidney specialist? Heart surgeon, nerve doctor, that would be so much easier to remember. It's a good thing we non-doctors have adjectives and aren't obliged to use different nouns to characterize every possible type of mother or car. But what characterizes an adjective? How do you tell which words in a sentence are adjectives? Like nouns, adjectives can have the or a in front of them. Nouns and adjectives are the only parts of speech that regularly do. But unlike nouns, adjectives can't stand alone and make any sort of sense, even when they have the or a in front of them. The yellow, an old, a loving, the best. All those adjectives need nouns to complete their meaning. The yellow car, an old doctor, a loving mother, the best. Well, that can stand alone when you mean the best person or thing, as in Latin attracts only the best and brightest, meaning the best and brightest students, or I want you to have the best, meaning the best thing. But adjectives like best aren't functioning as adjectives here. They're functioning as nouns. When adjectives act this way, grammarians call them substantives, and we're not going to discuss them here. I won't use substantives in any of my examples below. But if you go on to study Latin or English grammar further, you're very likely to run into substantives, so you will have to learn how they work. What adjectives do, normal adjectives, the way the vast majority of adjectives in real speech operate, what normal adjectives do is answer the question, what sort of, or which one? Which car? The yellow one. What sort of doctor? An old one. What sort of mother? A loving one. Which minds? The best ones. Here are 3 tests you can use to determine if a word is an adjective. 1. Can you put the or a in front of it? You'll also need to add a noun if you want it to make any sense. 2. Is there a noun or pronoun with it that it modifies? English tends to put the adjective first, so look for a noun immediately or soon after the adjective. There are occasions, however, when the adjective comes after the noun, especially in sentences like, you are wise. Wise is an adjective modifying you. This happens very often with the word to be, which can show up in various forms, am, are, is, was, were, have been, and so on. So look for an adjective following the noun or pronoun it modifies when the two are being connected by the word to be in some form. And 3, does the word serve the basic purpose that all adjectives serve? Does it tell you what sort of or which noun is meant? In the same way we practiced identifying nouns, let's practice identifying adjectives. The classical Romans conquered the Mediterranean world. This is a variation on the sentence in which we already identified the nouns. Do you remember what words were nouns here? That's right, Romans and world. Now let's look for adjectives. What about classical? Well, it has the in front of it, it's attached to a noun, Romans, and it modifies that noun. It tells you what sort of Romans. Not the modern Romans, the ones who are alive today, not prehistoric Romans, who lived before we have historical records of humans inhabiting Rome, but the classical Romans, who lived during the age when ancient Rome rose to power. So classical is an adjective. We'll color it orange, as we will all adjectives. Now, what about Mediterranean? It has the in front of it too, and it's also attached to a noun, in this case, world, and it modifies that noun. It's not the African world, or the American world, but the Mediterranean world. So, Mediterranean is also an adjective. You got it? Let's see. Let's up the ante a little bit, with a slightly longer sentence. A gently modified version of the sentence we did before when we were looking at nouns. Would sensible people back in ancient times have ever guessed that the tiny Roman state would one day rule the whole Italian peninsula? First, where are the nouns? Let's get them out of the way. You know how to figure out if a word is a noun, so I'll tell you how many nouns there are on a line of text, and you tell me which words are those nouns. The first line, would sensible people back in ancient, contains one noun. Which word is it? That's right, people. You can pluralize it, peoples, put the in front of it, the people, and replace it with it. Line 2. Times have ever guessed that the tiny includes one noun as well. Which word is that noun? Good for you. Times. It's already plural. You can put the in front of it, and replace it with them. Them, granted, would sound kind of odd, but it works grammatically. The next line, Roman state would one day rule the, has two nouns, and they are state and day. Test them. States, days, the state, the day. It can replace either. Must be nouns. Last line, whole Italian peninsula. One noun. Which word? Yes, peninsula. Now, what about the adjectives? Remember, adjectives have to modify nouns, so you can't under normal circumstances have an adjective if there isn't a noun. So let's look at the first noun, people. Is there an adjective with it? Is there something describing, modifying, or delimiting what people are meant? Yes, sensible. It goes with people and tells you what sort of people we're talking about. Also, while sensible doesn't have the in front of it, you could add the if you wanted to. The sensible people. Are there any other adjectives in this line? Any other modifier directly in front of a noun? What about ancient? You could put the in front. It goes with a noun, times, and it tells you what sort of times. Ancient must be an adjective. On to the next line. Any adjectives there? The next noun is state on line 3. So, what about tiny? Does it tell you what kind of state? Sure, it's another adjective. Next line, what about Roman? Does it tell you what kind of state? Indeed it does, the Roman state. But wait, can a noun have two adjectives? Can one stupid, silly, pointless, irritating, dumb, mindless noun have multiple adjectives? I'm sorry to say it can. So, Roman is clearly another adjective that goes with state. Tiny and Roman are both adjectives going with state. Any others on this line? Any other word that modifies a noun? There is another noun here, day. Does day have an adjective? Sure does. One. How many days? One day. If one isn't delimiting, what is? Last line. I'll give it away. There are two adjectives on this line, and there are only two words that aren't nouns, so the adjectives must be whole and Italian. The whole peninsula, not just part of it. The Italian peninsula, not Greece or Florida. And again, two adjectives with one noun. Get used to it. Think you got it? Let's see. Find the adjectives in here. Start by identifying the nouns one by one, and that way you'll know where to look for adjectives. Adjectives have to modify nouns, remember, so you can't have an adjective without a noun in some form or other. In line 1, up to kings, I see two nouns. Which words are they? Think plural. That's right. Romans and kings. Line 2, no nouns. Okay. Line 3, two nouns. Well, obviously, officers, it's plural, but which other word? Which one can be replaced by a pronoun like it? Yes, government. And it can be pluralized and have the in front of it. Definitely a noun. Line 4, two nouns again. Elders, obviously, another plural, but the other? It could replace which word? Assembly. And you could also say the assemblies. You got it. You're so good. Line 5, two nouns. Senate has the in front of it, and state can be pluralized. Must be nouns. Next line, one noun. People, of course. You can say the people, or pluralize it, or sing it, like Barbra Streisand. There's only one noun in the next line. Seat. That's right. A seat, or seats, or it. Last line, two nouns. Senate, we saw that already a few lines above. And wealth. which is hard to pluralize, but you can add the to the front of it and replace it with it. Now the fun part, adjectives. In line 1, there are 2 adjectives. What sort of Romans are we talking about? Early Romans, huh? That delimits the noun Romans then, doesn't it? Must be an adjective. And what kind of kings? Foreign kings, not local or homegrown. Foreign is another adjective. The next line has 1 adjective. Can you see it? What kind of government? A representative one. The adjective representative goes with government in the next line and tells you the type of government. On top of that, representative has a in front of it. It's definitely an adjective. Next line, 1 adjective. Which word? Executive. It tells you what kind of officers. Next line, 1 more adjective. What kind of assembly? A legislative assembly. Legislative is an adjective. Next line, 2 adjectives, and one of them is tricky. It's small, and you can easily overlook it. Which state? That's right, this state. Not that one or those 2, but this one. And the other adjective on this line? We know which state, but what kind of state is it? It's democratic. Another word that modifies state. But in this case, the adjective comes after state because the noun state and its adjective democratic are being linked here by was, a form of the verb to be. To be often has an adjective that follows its noun. Moving on to the next line, where there's 1 more adjective. What is it? Good for you. Only. Which people? Only those people. That's majorly delimiting, I'd say. And the next line, 2 adjectives. Permanent and Roman. And you tell me, how many adjectives are left in this passage? Any? Yes, 1. Great. It tells you how much wealth. Another way of saying what kind of wealth. Great wealth. Got it? Here's another paragraph. Let's start by identifying the nouns. In line 1, there are 2. I'm going to assume this is beginning to come rather quickly to you, so I feel like it's time to accelerate our analysis. If you need more time than I give you during the presentation, pause it and ask yourself the test questions for nouns or adjectives. Okay, here we go. Back to the first line. 2 nouns. Families, it's plural, and extraction, it's an it. Next line, 2 nouns. Yes, gentes and control. Okay, gentes is a weird foreign word, but it's still a noun. Line 3, 1 noun. Right, Rome. Who can't see that? Rome is the noun to end all nouns. Next line, 2 nouns. History and situation. Next line, 2 nouns. Millennium and families again. Next line, 2 nouns. Julians and Claudians, both plural. Next line, 2 nouns. Forget themselves, it's a pronoun. Rulers and century. And the last line, 2 nouns. Rise and empire. Rise is a noun here because it's being used like the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. The rise must be a noun. Now let's see if you can ferret out the adjectives in this passage. Line 1 has 2. That's right, extended and aristocratic. Line 2 has 1. Absolute? Absolutely. Line 3 has 2. Early and Republican. They both tell you what sort of history. The next line has 1. Does situation have a modifier in front of it? No, so no adjective there. What sort of millennium are we talking about? A full one? No, a half millennium. Half has to be an adjective here. It's telling what sort of millennium. In the next line are two adjectives. Little words, both of them. Be careful. How many families? What sort of families? Two and such. A number like 2 can be an adjective when it's modifying a noun. The next line has, can you tell me how many adjectives? Trick question, there aren't any. Teachers are so evil. What about the next to last line? See any adjectives there? I do. I see 2. What kind of rulers? Sole rulers. Which century? The 1st century. And finally the last line. Anything adjectival there? Sure. Roman. That was easy. Too easy. Let's hike up the pace on this grammatical battle cruiser. Ramming speed. Here's another paragraph. Can you figure out which words are nouns? I'll tell you right now, there are 14. Pause the presentation and see how fast you can find them all. And there they are. How long did it take you? 7 seconds. I'm not sure I believe you. Now, let's look for adjectives. There are 8. Pause and go get 'em, Tiger. Seriously, you got them all? Wow, you are the tiger. Now let's see if you're a lion. Here's another passage to nouns with another 14 nouns. Pause and lick your claws until you find them all. That was nasty, wasn't it? There were a lot of plurals at the beginning, and plurals make it easy, don't they? Still, all those small nouns at the end, you can make them all plural, can't you? Lines, ends, blocks. Men is already plural, but it's a weird word that doesn't use an S ending to form its plural. How about the adjectives here? 10 total. Engage, make it so. And there you are. Did you get everything right? You want to practice this more? Let me rephrase the question. Do you need to practice this more? If you do, here are 6 more paragraphs for you to test your understanding. I'll give you the passage, then on the next slide I'll show you the nouns, and on the next slide the adjectives, the same way we did above. Pause the presentation as necessary to figure out which words are nouns and adjectives. After you're done with this presentation and feel reasonably secure in your ability to identify nouns and adjectives, go on to the next presentation where we'll discuss prepositions and prepositional phrases. Walete discipuli.